my name is Meng and welcome to the 5th section of the SwiftUI course. I think this is probably the most exciting part of the course because we're going to deal with gestures, and this is something that is typically very hard to do. A lot of design and prototyping tools can take you as far as animations, but when it comes to interactions and when it comes to controls and dealing with data, that's where it gets painful and you start spending a lot of time trying to navigate around the limitations. But in SwiftUI, you're building something real. You're building something that engineers can use, and you can see here with very minimal effort, especially for the states and animations, it's really not that bad. I mean, if you're here at this very point, it means you can do it and you can take your design to the next level. Alright, so enough with the intro. Let's get started and set the view state so that the view state is going to be applied to our element. And it's very similar to the show, except that this time we're gonna set the positioning. So I'm gonna set right after show is equal to false, it's going to be state var view state is equal to cgsize.0. So the show state is for a boolean, true or false. The view state is a positioning. We're gonna need a cgsize which is composed of an x and y position. The 0 right here simply means that this is the default prop and it's set at 0, 0 position. Great, so let me resume this and then let's go to the part that I want to add gestures to. In this case, I'm going to add to the main card. So I'm gonna go right here after the tap action, after the parentheses. Make sure that you are at the right place, otherwise it's gonna give you an error. So you have the tap action has open and close curly braces, and right after we're going to write dot gesture, parentheses, and close, and then press enter inside. Now we should have something like this. Inside the parentheses, we're going to type drag gesture, parentheses. And then on another line, just like typing a modifier, it's going to be dot unchanged camel case, curly braces, and if you press enter, it's going to create the end curly brace for you. Inside the unchanged event, you are going to need to receive values, just like props in React. So if you don't do that, and especially because you're receiving stuff, you are going to receive errors. So you're gonna have to write value in, and now we can receive the values from this event. And from this value, we can receive the positioning of our drag. So we're gonna apply that positioning to our state called view state. So self.viewState is equal to value.translation, which is of type cgsize. And the view state that we set is also of the same type. So the only way you can match the two is if they have the same type of values. So this was the second step, right? The first step is to set the state. The second step is to apply the gesture and detect what is the positioning of our drag, and then apply that to the state. But still, so far, we only have information. We haven't applied that to our card in terms of the styling. And in this case, we're gonna use the offset to apply the translation value. So now let's go to the certificate view, and right after the parentheses, just like adding a modifier, we're going to add offset. And offset, we're going to apply either the X or the Y position using the translation. So we can do both, obviously. So X and then view state dot width. Now, because this is a CG size, the CG size has two values, which is a width and a height. And you can use this to correspond to the X and the Y position. So now I'm going to apply the Y position as well using the view state dot height. Now this should work. So I'm gonna click on play and then I'm gonna start dragging. Voila. As you can see, we're having some fun. The thing is, make sure that your initial velocity is set to 0, otherwise it's going to be really weird. And also, we're using the spring animation, so the responsiveness is not the same as if we're using, let's say, default or basic. But it's going to create some really interesting effects, and it works. The other thing to note is that, yes, we set the X and the Y position, but you can also decide to restrict it to just the X position, so you can only drag on vertically and then horizontally for the X position. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to be able to reset the position when I release anywhere. Luckily for me, I also have another event called unended. So I'm gonna put that right after the parentheses. And that's really important because yes, we do have some weird indentation here. It can be a bit confusing at first because the way that Swift handles indentation is that they have modifiers with indentation, and then when you deal with curly braces, sometimes they close it here or in the back. So you can definitely get a bit confused sometimes with the indentation. But the most important thing is that in programming, you always have an open curly braces and a close. The same for parentheses. And it's kind of similar to HTML tags where you have to open and close the tag. So the same for curly braces. Now, after the unchange and then the curly braces, I'm gonna set unended curly braces. And then let's not forget to receive the value in. Gonna set the indentation a little bit. And then I'm going to reset the view state position. So self.viewState is equal to CG size, because that's the value type of the view state, and set it to 0 for resetting the position. So now when I drag and I release, it just comes back to where it was. So let's apply the same offset. So not just the main card, but also the back cards. So I'm going to get all of this code for the modifier offset, copy that, and then for the card view, right after animation, I'm going to put that offset. The thing is, notice that we have two offsets. So this one is for tapping. This one is for the drag gesture. And you have to put this after this one, otherwise one is taking priority over the other. So having this one as a after seems to work for me. So I'm gonna do the same for the other card, and if you set it right, you should have something like this. It's really nice. One thing that would make this even nicer is that while we're dragging, it's going to apply the blur and a bunch of the other effects that we set with the show state. So what we can do here is that going back to the gesture, while we're applying the values to the view state, we can simply change the show state as well. So self.show is equal to true. What this means is that while we're dragging, we want the animations that we set earlier to be active. And we're gonna do the same for unended. So self.show is equal to false. All right, so we're gonna drag and voila. When we drag, the show state is set to true, therefore all of these stuff that we set, like blur, like the offset, the background color changing, all of that stuff is going to be active, and therefore it creates this really nice and organic feel to our animation. How awesome is that? One last thing is I want to set the red here for the second card to be another color, so I'm going to use one of my preset colors, and I'm going to use, let's say, background 5. And feel free to use your own colors. And here I have this really nice set of colors, and we can have so much fun. And I definitely encourage you to customize with your own animations, your own design. You can even play with something like, you know, using the same card or a different card design. It's really up to you. If you manage to build something that you're really proud of, especially with your own design, your own card design, your own colors, your own effects, feel free to shout out to me on Twitter, and I would love to share the work that you do using my course. I would be absolutely thrilled to see that. So we definitely have more stuff to cover, such as the menu animation, how to pass props, how to do some data binding, and I think that's going to be really powerful for you to know those things. So I hope you'll stay with me as we build the rest of the app. See you soon.